Hey, what's up? It's me, J-Hood. Thanks so much for tuning in. Here to talk about the passing of Hulk Hogan. We found out on Thursday afternoon that Hulk Hogan has passed away. And I want to talk to you about some of my memories of Hulk Hogan because Hogan is the most recognizable mainstream pro wrestler in the history of our business. And you can think about all the wrestlers of today and back in the 50s and 60s, but no one more recognizable in and out of the ring than Hulk Hogan. And so my beginning of watching Hulk Hogan was in my dad's TV room in the 1970s, watching Hulk Hogan wrestle for the American Wrestling Association, the AWA, under the leadership of Vern Gagne. He was wearing turquoise trunks, and he was always battling Jesse Ventura and other heels in the company. But everyone in the era wanted Hulk Hogan to be able to beat Nick Bockwinkel for the AWA Heavyweight Championship. And so I saw this as a young kid looking at Hulk Hogan, and he was supposed to be the next big thing, but he'd always win by disqualification. He was never able to beat the savvy veteran Nick Bockwinkel for the AWA Championship. And so, I think a lot of fans were frustrated because they thought Hogan's the next guy, babyface, but Nick Bockwinkel held it down, and Vern did not want Hogan to win that championship. So Hogan went to the WWF, and even though I saw Hulkamania first in the AWA, it really came into his own in the WWF. As the Iron Sheik was a transitional champion, Hulk Hogan beat the Iron Sheik in Madison Square Garden. Everyone saw that either live on TV or through the magazines, but everyone said Hogan finally is a world heavyweight champion, and he defeats the Iron Sheik for the WWF championship. It was the marketing and booking of Vince McMahon, and of course the charisma and the drama that Hogan would bring. Those two put together, McMahon and Hogan, they made magic, and they made loads of money because everywhere Hogan went, it was a sold-out crowd. Everywhere Hogan went, there were wrestlers that were clamoring to be on that card because if Hogan's on top and he's wrestling for his championship, you want to be part of that because the payday was great. Everyone wanted to be on a card that Hogan was on because he was the guy. And you talk about wrestling in that time, it wasn't necessarily about 10 or 15 moves that he did. He dropped that leg 1, 2, 3. He'd wrestle 10 or 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and that was it. You were there to see the introduction. You want to see the pose afterwards. You want to see Hulk Hogan go in there and beat the heel. Whoever the heel was, he was there to beat the heel. And he was able to do that so many times. Think about this. In that era, we're talking about 300 times a year, him traveling across the country, around the world, defending that WWF championship. And even when he wasn't champion, people wanted to see Hogan because of his message. The promo meant so much. Looking at those 24, 25-inch pythons, the big muscles, and he's always from Venice Beach, California, 302 pounds. People went to California just hoped they could see a glimpse of Hogan, even though he was from Tampa. It's been a lot of time in Tampa, Florida. But the point is, though, that the say your prayers, eat your vitamins, all that resonated through cartoons and wrestling figures and championship belts and T-shirts. Everyone wanted to live vicariously through Hulk Hogan. And, of course, with him being an actor and Rocky and all that, people just knew who Hogan was. And there's a lot of wrestlers that have been around for a long time, but no one was more mainstream than Hulk Hogan. So you remember a time where Hulkamania was not cool. From 94 to, 84 to about 91, 92, people were into Hogan. But then into the 90s, it started to wane. And this is why the Ultimate Warrior became the WWF champion, defeating Hulk Hogan. As you remember, the Intercontinental and World title on the line. And you saw Warrior become a double champion. And Hogan kind of just petered out, wasn't the guy. And then when they found out the Ultimate Warrior was never going to be able to be at the same level, even close to Hulk Hogan, then Hogan came back and had another run with the WWF. But there was a time where there was a butting of heads between Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan. Anytime that you have success, there's always going to be jealousy or questions on who should be able to get all the credit. And so Hogan just fades away. He goes back into TV and movies and gets a call from Ric Flair. And Rick says, "Would you like to be in WCW?" And he's like, "Yeah, let me go through my tapings and see if I can make time to be in WCW." You notice during the time of Hogan being the champion, I remember this all the time because I was read the magazines. That's how I followed wrestling, TV and the magazines. Everyone wondered, would we ever see the matchup between Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan? Will we ever see that matchup? The NWA champion, the guy that was the traveling champion, against the company champion, but the champion that people love, Hulk Hogan. Will we ever see those two wrestle in the ring? And we got it in WCW. We never got that at WrestleMania. We never got that at Survivor Series or Royal Rumble. We never got that match. They had it in some cities, but Vince McMahon never thought that was a main event match, so we never got it. But we got it in WCW, and this is where Hogan defeated Flair for the WCW Championship. If Hogan doesn't come to WCW, WCW closes its doors much sooner than it did. Hogan was able to breathe life into WCW. Nothing against Sting or Luger or the Horsemen and some of these other guys, but Hogan was the guy. You had to have Hogan to keep WCW viable and lucrative and popular. And this is why for 83 weeks, one of the reasons why that the Nitro show is beating Raw is because of Hogan. We never thought we'd see Hogan in the modern era turn heel. When he first got to WCW, still wearing the yellow and the red, and it was washed. Nobody down south wanted to see Hogan be that guy. But when he decided to turn heel, thanks to Kevin Sullivan and others that were convincing him, he finally turned to the dark side. He was the third man in that six-man tag team matchup, aligning himself with Kevin Nash and with Scott Hall, and history was made. And for a nice run, the NWO and WCW, they ran supreme. It was the number one brand in wrestling for a long time from a ratings standpoint. And so in WCW, Hogan had his share of really good matches, even though, again, he's at the tail end of his career. And again, he was a must-watch. He was never a great worker, never was, but he was always an attraction. And either you want to see him get beat, that was me, or you want to see him win. He had so many terrific matches, cage matches, grudge matches, wrestled all over the world. And people paid to see him get in there and perform. So after his time with WCW, and you know how that ended toward the back end, it wasn't great. He goes to Impact Wrestling, goes to TNA, and he was the GM, and he really had the pencil in a lot of ways, had his control of his creative, not only in WCW, but also in TNA, Impact Wrestling as well. And I saw Hogan. I remember being at the Sears Center in Hoffman Estates, and I saw Hogan on a taping go down the ramp 2 or 3 times, 4 times, limping down the ramp, being able to be the general manager, a heel or a babyface general manager. And it just wasn't great. But I think a lot of people enjoyed watching Hogan go out there and just be on the TV. He had a few matches here or there, and you just know that he was done. So many injuries, so many issues to his body. He mentioned one of the reasons why that I had a hard time is I dropped the leg way too often, 300 times a year. That's why I have no hip. That's why he had leg surgery, back surgery, all the stuff that he had to go through because of all the stuff that he did in the ring. So we saw him a lot. But I think that toward the end of his life, he got booed a lot, and people resented Hogan. For the guy that was the babyface and the All-American, people resented Hogan for the things that he said and his persona. And, you know, for me, it's a complicated legacy. It's a guy that people believed in, the All-American. There's been a lot of American characters in professional wrestling. Hogan was number one. There's no question about that. But the complicated legacy is just, the things that he said, using the N-word, being booed at Raw. That's the lasting legacy of Hogan at the end. Just being able to not be appreciated by the fans. But the way I look at it is that for a guy that didn't root for him as a fan, I understand what he brought to the business, and he kept the business thriving, the business I love in professional wrestling. But at the end, it was not great. And I think that we can be able to look at the history of both ends of Hulk Hogan. But again, as far as him being the best, he's one of the best in the Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling for everything that he's done.